Yesterday, I watched this twisty thriller film on my flight from Mumbai to Delhi. Honestly, it was the perfect way to fill those 2 hours. The name of the film is KavalKalam, which in Malayalam means Guardian of the Ground. The title refers to a ritualistic performance from southern Kerala where a person acts as a Bhadrakali searching for the Asur Darika. So it's actually perfect for the film, which shows a battle between a sharp police officer and an evil killer. First things first, this killer is quickly revealed. Just a few minutes into the movie, we know who he is. So this film is not a whodunit, but a will he get caught, and if so, how? So throughout the film, the killer leaves behind bodies and a sharp smell of poison. On the other side, there is a determined investigator racing against time. He is very close to finding the killer, and yet very far, because the killer is always one step ahead of him, even though the investigating officer is known as Baz for his sharp detection skills. So what you're watching is a tense and dangerous game where one mistake can change everything. 1 minute you think there's no way for this ruthless killer to escape, and the next minute you realize he's changed the entire game. That too, right under the nose of the police. Hello, I'm Shubhra, and you're watching Twisted, a place where every story has a dark side and a mystery waiting to be solved. Now, if you love true crime like I do, parts of the story will feel familiar. The film is inspired by a real-life serial killer case, one that has been explored before, most famously in the chilling cyanide Mohan case. So yes, you might think you already know where this is going. They made the hard on the same story, and I quite liked it. But Kalam Kaval still manages to stand out because of how well it is put together. The film sets up a tense cat-and-mouse game between this sharp investigator and a calm, calculating killer. Watching the detective slowly close in on the criminal has that classic procedural feel, step by step, detail by detail, and it keeps you hooked until the end. That said, I want to be honest. The film is not flawless. While the pace is tight, there are some big loopholes that you have to overlook if you want to enjoy it fully. For example, the ease with which the killer charms one woman after another and moves through different guest houses without raising suspicion feels a bit too convenient. In a modern setting, it all seems overly simple. In real life, something like this would involve many complications. But here, it often feels like the world around him is conveniently asleep just so that the story can move forward. You also can't help wondering why the police don't connect the dots between identical crimes much earlier. The investigator comes across as brilliant, but partly because everyone else seems unusually slow. Although the film is set in the early 2000s, when technology wasn't so advanced, seeing the killer repeat the same pattern again and again without being flagged can feel a bit hard to believe, especially if you're one of those hard-nosed crime buffs. Now, let's talk about the performances. We have to mention Mammootty, of course. Casting him is a bold and interesting choice, but for me, the execution didn't fully work. He's a phenomenal actor, no doubt, but at times he feels too big for this role. His presence carries a certain weight and grandeur, which doesn't always suit the gritty, everyday life of this character. In some scenes, his superstar aura actually takes away from the vulnerability that this role demands. On the other hand, the lead detective played by Vinayakan is excellent. He has that sharp, focused look all through, and thankfully, they don't show him carrying any personal burdens like we see in countless crime movies these days. The supporting characters are also very strong. They feel like real people, not cardboard characters. This film once again shows how Malayalam cinema is doing incredibly well in the investigative thriller space. They've mastered the slow burn style where mood and atmosphere matter just as much as dialogue. The director, Jitin K. Jose, is definitely someone to keep an eye on. He also wrote the story for the hugely successful Kuru, and you can see his clear interest in understanding the criminal mind. What's interesting is how the film explores the killer's ego against the investigator's patience. It's less about spectacle and more about mental endurance. And I just learned from Wikipedia that the film has emerged as the 5th highest grossing Malayalam film of 2025 and one of the highest grossing Malayalam films of all time. If you enjoy this film and want to watch more in the same vein, I would strongly recommend Anjam Pathira and Nayatu. Nayatu in particular is fascinating because it shows how the system can turn against its own people, very different from the structured investigation we see in Kalam Kaval. Together, these films prove that Kerala has set the gold standard for police procedurals that are both intelligent and emotionally grounded. So despite its logic gaps and some casting choices that don't fully land, Kalam Kaval is still a solid recommendation, especially for a flight or a long weekend watch.